All right, it is 7 o'clock. We will call the October meeting of the Hartsville Trouser County Planning Commission to order. Mary Ann, would you please call roll?
Okay. Mary Ann Baker's here. Sarah Murray. John Kerr.
Here.
Rhonda Kiesling. Here. David Nallner.
Here.
David Thomas. Here. Carol Pruitt. Mark Swaffer. Thomas Harper. Here. Sam Edwards. Here.
We do have 6 members present, so we do have a quorum. Next is the approval of the minutes for the month of October. Everybody's had a copy of these for quite some time, had a chance to look over them. Did anybody notice any corrections or changes that need to be made to last month's minutes? Seeing none, I would accept a motion to approve last month's minutes. Motion by Mr. Harper. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Thomas. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. They do pass. All right, are there any changes that need to be made or updates or anything to our agenda tonight from anybody? Mary, you got any changes or same? Mayor? Any members? Then we do have our agenda set for tonight. First is old business. We're going to go back. We looked at this last month. Some of y'all had some questions, and I believe we had some people in the audience that had some questions also on a request by Hartsville Cabinet for the rezoning of McMurray Boulevard East, parcel 17.24, from R1 to C2. This request is to take the lots back to the commercial for development potential and to match the normal zoning use of McMurray Boulevard. We did discuss this pretty good last month. I made my statements that I do think that this property should be zoned commercial. That's the natural use for it there, especially where it's located. And everybody had their chance to also talk. But I believe the main thing tonight was requesting Mr. Ford to be here so that he could answer any questions. Jason, would you come up at this time to the microphone right over there? Thank you, sir. If anybody have any, well, first is, would you like to just say anything about your zoning change?
So, Mr. Ford, excuse me, there's a button here at the bottom if you could.
No, I mean, all the property up and down McMurray Boulevard is commercial. So we're just wanting to get that back to commercial for potential of anything. But other than that, no.
Okay. So you want to have the property rezoned to actually match the rest of the zoning of the
Correct.
Property that fronts Highway 25
Yes.
there. Okay. Any members of the Planning Commission have any questions for Mr. Ford? Mr. Thomas?
I'm curious. I know we've had to move several properties to residential from commercial when the state came through and just changed everything. Why was this not changed then, or was it and then turned residential at that time?
Sam probably have to answer. I don't recall when the state did that originally.
Mm-hmm.
They really hit a lot of those houses there on Hilltop and in the actual, what I call the old town footprint. I don't know if it went out that far. I don't know why, if it didn't. Sam, can you answer that?
So that portion was not rezoned to, that portion was zoned commercial as the state came through. So when the application for the subdivision came through, it was for the entire piece. At that point, my opinion is the planners should have done like we have started doing and refused it and made that front portion remain commercial since it was already made commercial by the state. You are correct that we are having to fix several of the residential housing areas that just got swooped up in that broad swath
Yeah.
that the state took as when they came in and took over the zoning. Does that answer your question?
Well, I was just wondering if there was a reason why that it was, so I guess maybe Jason, you could answer, when you guys did the subdivision, was there any idea of doing commercial in the front? Or when you did the subdivision, you just planned to do residential from the start?
Well, you never would have put houses right on the main road of 25 or right there. So that's the reason the houses started where we've got them at and left that below. And then we bought the property to the left. Of course, that changed those two to commercial, and the rest for the apartments back in there. And then we bought the property to the right, which was Jake Wynn's property. So, I mean, I just don't see it's feasible to put houses somewhere that they're not belong.
And Jason's, I don't know if it's his defense, but his father was the one that originally asked to rezone it back to R1. I'm not even sure how old Jason was at that time. He probably was a young fella.
I don't
And
know.
may not even, been that much involved in the business at that time. So he may be in a disadvantage to answer your question.
Well, I was just asking about the zoning, why it was swapped from one to another. I guess the concern I had looking at it is, I know there's a difference in the property rate, the tax rate between commercial and residential. And if it was commercial before and now wanting to go back to commercial, I'm just wanting to make sure there was nothing nefarious done as trying to avoid property tax in that they were, it was just a normal change of decision. Or
I don't know if anybody can you answer that?
I can't answer that question, but I can say that I don't want to eat my words, but the tax assessor charges you for use. So as long as it's not being used for commercial,
So
it's
there's
never
no
going to be
difference.
charged for commercial.
Okay.
He would have to drop a building on it, and once the building's on there, then he would be charged for commercial rate.
I'd been asked questions about it, and so I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that at least it was discussed.
And I've heard the same thing that, but it's just hard to go back that many years and
Well, but if it's
to know
only
what
based
the
on
true
the,
intent of it was at that time.
if it's only based on development, the land there has never been developed, therefore there was no difference how it was zoned. So it wouldn't
I've
matter.
been told on multiple occasions by the tax assessor, it's based on use. So as long as it's not being used as commercial, it doesn't get charged as commercial.
That's what I needed to know.
Okay, good, Sam. Other commission, oh, I'm sorry, did you have those? Anyone else have a question for Mr. Ford?
I do. Do you have any plans? Are you gonna once it's rezoned, are you gonna put it up for sale, or do you plan on putting a commercial business there? That's the only problem I have.
Not at the time. I mean, I have no plans whatsoever. I mean, but if it is commercial and there's something does want to move to Hartsville, I mean, it's obvious that there's not many commercial lots on 25 available.
Like I said, again, that's just my concern. If you put a commercial business, there's quite a few houses up through there. And if you put a commercial business right there, how are they gonna is it gonna come in off the highway?
It has to come in off a highway. It can't come in
I
on
don't-
the subdivision road.
And then the traffic flow, but I guess that would be addressed if somebody bought it and they wanted to develop it, then they would come and say, this is our plan, and we would address all those issues then.
And
right?
TDOT would have the most major say in traffic flow and ingress and egress
Okay.
because all that, it's all on Highway 25 and they own it. So
Okay,
it would really be whatever the developer is like Jason, he's the property owner. If someone came in wishing to put a commercial business on there, then it would be up to that owner of the potential business and TDOT to work out those things. Am I right, Sam?
That's correct. We can approve the driveway access to the main road, but TDOT can turn around and say it's no good. And then they overrule us on the driveway entrance on where it needs to be. So, I mean, in my opinion, if that does happen, then they should come back in front of us with a new site plan because it's changed. But more than likely, it's going to be done on the far end, as far away from that driveway entrance as possible. It'd be like, there's several areas in Gallatin. If something does come forward to us, it'd be a shared driveway for multiple businesses on one exit further down. So, I mean, when it comes in front of us, that'd be our job to make sure that there's only a single driveway, so it limits the traffic.
Yes, sir.
I would like to make sure that everyone is aware, though, of how much we've already approved in that short area of less than about 1,000 foot of the stretch of 25, with the expansion of Ridgecrest subdivision there, or Hickory Ridge, sorry, with Hickory Ridge expanding on Acorn, the apartments that are going right behind it, and then the next property over, houses going in that section too. We are getting fairly dense right there with a major artery. And it is going to get more congested as we go through. There's still the corner lots there on New Halltown that, you know, are listed commercial on both sides of New Halltown there.
And are for sale.
And are for sale. So, I mean, we're getting more and more congested through there. And I would like to say, Jason, to your point about houses not being able to, you know, be put near the road, I believe we just approved Mr. Beasley's to go from commercial to residential because he couldn't get a business interested. And he's already got one house built on that entry lot, and the other one was turned over to residential.
Actually, in my opinion, both Mr. Beasley and Mr. Ford were correct. Mr. Beasley had tremendous interest in his subdivision. I mean, I've never seen in my lifetime in Hartsville houses go and sell as fast as they have. And he just, I don't know that he can keep up with demand right now. And in Jason's there, I just feel like that where his subdivision is located, those lots near the road are prime commercial properties because of the easy access of they're not way down, they're not up on a hill, and that type of thing that people are going to have to deal with. I would think that someone with a commercial interest would be very interested in his property. As well as the holders probably down the road and stuff, because they're all, well, that one is level, the other's way on up there. Yes, sir.
Mr. Beasley's actually here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think y'all had an interested party in that corner lot prior to the rezoning anyways. Is that correct? I believe y'all had an interested party in that corner lot prior to the rezoning request. Is that correct? Yes. Okay.
And we desperately need to attract some commercial businesses of some sort. Yes, sir, I agree.
And it's got to go somewhere.
It does. It does. Other questions? Comments from the Planning Commission? I don't see our gentleman in the audience from last month, but is there anyone in the audience that would like to ask Mr. Ford a question? Again, I don't see the gentleman that was here last month.
So just to be clear, there's nothing planned at this moment.
No.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
What difference would that make if something was planned? I think he has the right to rezone it commercial with no plans or with plans or with a
I wish his
buyer
answer had been yes.
or with a buyer downstairs in the parking lot. I don't think that should even figure into our decision.
I don't
It's
either. I
whether
think
it
Sam was
fits,
just clarifying
and I'm not
what had
fussing,
been said.
yeah. But I mean, if it fits the property and the state is okay with it,
Right.
I don't see what the big deal is.
I think you made a good point. Whenever someone buys that with a commercial interest, they're still going to have to come in here with a plat.
Right.
And Mary and Sam are going to look at all that, and it's going to have to go through us and get approval, and just every step that any of them ever have to do, they're going to have to follow it step by step and do all that. So, right.
And I'll add, like I added in the last meeting, we did just past the vegetation barrier to these commercial lots. So if any business does choose one of those lots in the future, they're required by our new rules to have the fence, the 7-foot opaque fence, and a vegetation barrier put around that piece of property. So just,
Didn't we recently, in front of Mr. Carmen's subdivision, is in front of that still commercial?
Yes,
we did. We required
So
him to
what's
do
the
that.
difference?
right,
Is my point.
exactly. All right. Any other members of the planning commission like to make a comment or have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Also, I think the concern is some of the property owners back there, when they bought their property, the front was zoned residential. And they have concerns, or they have voiced that if they knew the front of the property was going to be zoned commercial, they're afraid it's going to affect their property values, is what I've heard. That's what people
I'm
have
sure,
told
and
me. And I understand
yes,
that.
that's what I was about to say. I completely understand anyone being concerned about the value of their property in the future, whether it may go up or may go down. I can't see property going down in the immediate future as well as things seem to be going, but neither can we pigeonhole or make our property owners. I mean, it may be 20 years before somebody wants to do something. We still have to have places available or we're never going to get anything,
Right.
in my opinion. All right. Anybody else? All right. So Mr. Ford has asked for his property to be changed from a zoning of R1 to C2 in the commercial district for potential commercial use. Do I have a motion to accept or deny this petition? I have a motion to approve Mr. Ford's request. Mr. Noller seconds. Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. It does pass. So it will go, Jason, it will now go to the county commission with a favorable recommendation from this body. All right, next on our agenda is new business. First is a request by Matthew Carmen for the rezoning of Highway 141 North of 51.22 acres. It's in the 8th district from A1 to R1 for property development. Okay. Thanks, sir.
This is just a possible exhibit. Doesn't mean things are going to work out like this, but anyway, Mr. Darrell Carmen, who's passed away, his family would like to rezone his property there. Not to maximize it per se, because some of the families looking at getting the house, they don't want 10 houses right in front of them, but to add some flexibility because they've got some rental houses and stuff right there and some drainage ways, patterns that 3-acre lots are gonna be cumbersome in that area. So they would like to get this rezoned to subdivide it and sort of match going into Macon County right there. As you can see, it sits astride the county line right there. And that's what they're looking at doing.
Okay.
And Matthew's here on behalf of the family to answer any questions you might have.
Matthew, do you have anything you'd like to say before we move on? The only question I've had about it, and I don't know how many of you saw my response to the email last week, was the what I consider 2 flag lots on the right side there.
That exhibit was in relation to one of the other rezonings on the agenda that was provided, the flag lot exhibit.
Well, this
This
one
is
has
the
them.
new one as
This one
well.
has them too.
Yeah, and this is only a rezoning at this point in time, so if he were to come through with the plat, that would be in consideration, but I think he just wants to let you know how many lots you could get out of it feasibly. We're
Okay.
not gonna be approving anything.
I understand. My concern is, I think he should know, or the property owners and the people should know that, and you answered me, but I can't remember what we said. What is our policy on flag lots?
So
In our
Go.
subdivision regulations, there's a width to depth ratio provision that limits your lot to be, can't be more than 5 times deeper than it is wide to help limit the creation of flag lots.
Yeah, just to address that, we're trying to give you an overall picture of everything that Mr. Carmen owns right there. Those lots, if they were to be done like that, would be in access. They wouldn't even be on a plat that you would ever come before this body because they don't meet planning requirements.
Okay.
So in other words, those are probably 10-acre tracts that you're looking at right there.
Okay.
And we're just looking at, I was just trying to give you a picture of the whole thing right there, what you were looking at.
So this is, asked Jim to provide a maximum potential proposal,
I understand.
so y'all can.
But my feeling was that if I have a question about it, the owner should know it as soon as possible instead of a last minute.
Yeah, we totally understand
Yeah.
the regulations concern.
All right. Any questions, comments from members of the Planning Commission? Mr. Carmen is asking for this property to be rezoned, so he's asking this body to send this to the County Commission with a favorable recommendation. Okay, looks like we're ready to move on. Do I have a motion to approve or to deny this request by Mr. Carmen to rezone this property from A1 to R1? Yes, sir. Have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Harper. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, say no. Does pass unanimously. Next on our agenda is a request by Lewis Cass Beasley III. And he would like to rezone the property at 3605 Highway 10, which is 11.17 acres, also from A1 to R1 for property development. Sam and I can share one. Oh, okay. Jim, is this part of Phyllis's old farm?
No, sir, this is actually Jason Shepherd's
Oh, okay.
former property right after you pass the church on the right and get in the straight stretch right there. This is Jason Shepherd's. Mr. Beasley's purchased this, is wanting to rezone it for subdivision purposes and is here to answer any questions you might have. I am going to take my surveying cap off, and this is in my neighborhood. This piece of property's been somewhat derelict for 20 years, and I would recommend y'all rezone it, just nothing else, to upgrade the neighborhood quite a bit right there.
So as a resident of Trousdale County and this particular neighborhood, you're speaking in favor of this?
Yes, that's
because
correct.
it will clean up or be it would be an addition, a positive addition to the neighborhood.
That's entirely correct. Yes, I am. Yes, that it has the 2 old trailers on it right there in the straight stretch right there. This is
On Brian's.
Yeah, that's where it's rising.
Of course, my concern with the, again, what I consider a flag lot back there, but this is just a rezoning. Anybody have any questions or comments about Mr. Beasley's request? Seeing none, anybody like to make a motion? Yes, ma'am. I have a motion to approve Mr. Beasley's request to rezone this property to R1. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Nolan. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. It does pass unanimously and will be sent on to the Planning Commission with a favorable opinion. Next on our agenda is a request by WAC. I don't want to call that WAC Properties. That might. Oh, do you? Okay. Request by WAC Properties for a final plat approval of Highway 10 of 9.03 acres in the 3rd Civil District for 3 subdivided lots. I was afraid I might be being too, you know.
I think this one's pretty well straightforward, but I'll be glad to try to answer any questions. We're looking at subdividing 3 lots here on Highway 10, just past Miss Shoulder's house in the, if you're familiar with in that area, in the big hayfield that's just past her house right there.
Mary, would you like to comment on this?
Yes, I would. There are a few items that were included in the staff report that were minor corrections that needed to be made on the plat. All of that information has been added, so I'm not going to go through that. The few items that should be discussed or looked at by the Planning Commission from the subdivision regulations are pertaining to Section 4-102.402, which relates to access from arterial and collector public ways, and states that the Planning Commission may require that lots shall not derive access exclusively from arterial or collector public ways, where driveway access may be necessary for several adjoining lots. The Planning Commission may require that the lots be a combined access drive to limit possible.
Could you pull your mic down just a little?
Possible traffic hazards. Driveways should be designed and arranged to avoid requiring vehicles to back onto arterial or public ways. For this plat, Highway 10 is an arterial. There's not another street available for these lots to access, so the driveways would need to be designed to avoid possible traffic hazards. And if the Planning Commission desired to require it, they could require that these 3 lots be served by a common access drive to avoid 3 driveways. The parcels are relatively large and could potentially be spread out and designed so as to not create a hazard, but that's just an opportunity that the Planning Commission has. The next requirement that needs to be looked at is in relation to water facilities. And we've talked about this before, but the subdivision regulations state that where a public water main is within reasonable access of the subdivision, as determined by the Planning Commission, the subdivider should install adequate water facilities, including hydrants, subject to approval of the Planning Commission and Tennessee Department of Health in these regulations. We're required for fire protection, water mains should not be less than 6 inches. And the water line on Highway 10 in this location is 6 inches. Fire hydrants would be required in all subdivisions. They should not be located more than 1,000 feet apart and be within 500 feet of any residential, commercial, or industrial lot. So the nearest fire hydrant to this subdivision is about 0.85 miles, as he has labeled on the plat. I will say all these 3 lots are 3.01 acres in size, and the zoning district that this is in, the A1 zoning district, does allow 3-acre lots without fire protection. You can get smaller lots if you add fire protection. So this is kind of contradictory in the fact, but the Planning Commission does have the opportunity to require fire hydrant facilities if needed for fire protection. And this is a 6-inch line. So those are the two items for consideration, the access to the arterial and fire hydrant facilities.
Anybody have any, I'm sorry, anybody have any questions for Mary? Of course, you've got her comments there in front of you. Okay, Sam?
I have nothing to add unless anybody has questions for me.
Anybody have any questions for Sam or Mary? Okay. Members of the commission, do you have any comments or questions? If not, I would entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Harper, I'm assuming to approve. Okay. Motion by Mr. Harper to approve. Do I have a second? Her hand was up first. Your voice, but her hand. Second by Ms. Keesling. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. It does pass. And our next item under new business is a request by Billy Smith for final plat approval of on Dixon Creek Road, 6.94 acres for the creation of 2 lots for property development.
This is the Billy Smith estate property out on out in the Cato community on Dixon Creek Road. They're looking at selling the farm out there and wanting to cut off a couple of smaller tracts right there. Be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Billy was a heck of a guy. We lost a good one when he passed. But regardless, any questions anybody has at this time for Mr. Carmen? Mary?
For this property, the same item related to fire hydrant supplies that was mentioned with the previous property. Both of these lots are over 3 acres, so they comply with the zoning district requirement that a lot be over 3 acres if it does not have fire protection. However, there is a 6-inch line available on Dixon Creek if the commission were to want to require those facilities be installed. Also to note for this plat is there is a portion of lot 2 is constrained by FEMA flood zone A. The area appears to be beyond the limit of the FEMA flood study. I'll point to the subdivision regulations, section 2-101. Article 2-101.4, in determining the appropriateness of land subdivision at any site containing a flood-prone area, the planning commission in reviewing any plat should consider the policy and purpose set forth in this section and the guidance that's provided on in that section. I will say the guidance in the section is relatively extensive, but just to highlight, the planning commission should ensure what developments within any floodway or floodway fringe area are protected adequately against any flood hazards. The planning commission should review this article and determine if any measures need to be set as a condition with this plat to address the flood-prone areas. And this article does give the planning commission the opportunity to disapprove the subdivision if any land containing a flood-prone area when the commission determines the plans are not consistent with the policy in this section. Again, the plat issues that are listed in your packet, I did receive a resubmittal today that addressed all of those minor details to be cleaned up, other than one. I think the square footage for lot 1 is not listed in It's an acreage still, so, but that's just something minor that he can.
Oversight, I will take care of that.
Yeah, he can get that cleaned up, no problem. So that's the only remaining minor note to be added. And if you want me to dig into any of the information on flood prone areas, if we don't have the subdivision regulations in front of us, let me know. I will go through those with you all.
So and you may have said it and I missed it, says staff will provide a recommendation at the meeting. Are you ready to do that, or do you want to see if anybody has any questions?
My recommendation would be that with all of the items that are cleaned up, there's none of those conditions to be added. So my recommendation would be the commission looks at the plat to make sure they're comfortable with the compliance of the flood prone areas with the information provided in the subdivision regulations, and set any conditions needed to protect those areas and approve the plat with those conditions included if needed.
So if your recommendation, if I'm following correctly, is that if the commission chooses to approve that the plat issues identified here on your paper be included.
The plat issues identified on the paper have been corrected,
Oh,
other
okay.
than the addition of the
Okay.
square footage to lot one. The only items that are remaining to be reviewed by the planning commission would be whether hydrants need to be required because there's a 6-inch line in this area, and if any additional conditions need to be imposed for the flood area contained in lot 2.
Is there a 6-inch line all the way out to it, or is it a 4 that goes into it?
It starts right there. It starts right there at the intersection that's on the plat. See, there's a 4-inch right there that's south.
So it's a 4 that runs into a 6.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, this is kind of a tricky area where the zoning resolution is going to be contradictory to what's in the subdivision regulations. The subdivision regulations offer the opportunity for the planning commission to require fire hydrant facilities be installed where there's adequate water available. The zoning resolution allows A1 lots to be on fire protected over 3 acres. So it's definitely a bit of a gray area between
Right.
what one is requiring and the other.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, but I think what Mary is trying to say is that since there is a 6-inch line out there, the planning commission does have the authority to require fire hydrant or to whatever it would be required for that. However, that with the amount of the property and under our current zoning, it doesn't just necessarily have to be by, 100%. It's a decision of this body. So you may want to think about that just a minute and ask any questions. Yes, sir?
The property we just approved was 3 properties at over 3. Over 3, and we didn't ask for fire hydrant because it's agricultural, not residential. They're agricultural on this one also.
Actually, both were going from agriculture to R1.
Okay. So the way I look at
This is still agricultural. This is just a plat being reviewed, no rezoning.
Oh,
These are
okay,
both
okay. I'm sorry.
properties over
I'm
3
sorry.
acres that will.
I stand corrected again.
I think in the ones we've done residential, we have asked for fire hydrants, but agricultural, we just seem to be approving as on.
And the owner may come in with plat approval or something with those on there
Yeah.
at that time. Or may not. That's, again, up to the owner.
This is plat approval, to clarify. He's requesting final plat approval. So if you wanted hydrants installed, this would be the time to ask for
Oh, okay.
hydrants to be
Okay.
installed.
And I was just making a statement for just consistency of what we're doing. We didn't ask for it on Highway 10.
Well, it wasn't final plat approval. This one is.
The previous one was also a plat approval.
Okay, see, I'm messing up big time tonight. Okay, yes, sir. Sam?
I think the confusing part is the acreage that's being split off. Because of the size of acreage, usually we'd be able to approve some of these in-house, but when they get cut off other pieces of property, there's, a third that's not showing up as well. But in this particular case, there is, like Mary's saying, there's an option for us to choose for a fire hydrant to be required to be installed to allow this to split, if we take that.
I would also like to clarify that in the past, we've looked at a lot of these plats that are in the A1 zoning district where there is not a water line that is adequate to provide fire hydrants, because both of these subdivisions are happening on an arterial. There happens to be a 6-inch line. So usually there's a 4-inch or a 2-inch, if any, water line, and it's not generally adequate for fire hydrants. So that's why the planning commission generally doesn't ask that they be put in, because the facilities aren't there. In this case, because they're both on arterials, the 6-inch line is there. However, as I stated, the resolution does permit 3-acre lots where there's no fire protection. That's the size that's required. So all of these lots that we've looked at do meet that, but there is adequate facility to provide a fire hydrant in both of these plat cases.
Sam, as our local codes man, do you have a recommendation? And you may not, that's fine, if you want to leave it up to the committee. I'm fixing to ask the mayor when you get through, so if you want to defer to the mayor.
I'm racking my brain on water pressure out there, even though it has 6-inch line. I don't think that area has enough pressure. I could be wrong, but even if we did put a fire hydrant out there, I don't think the pressure's there.
Well, I think that's true, but I think one of the points Mary's making, that in the future, those 4 inches may get changed and they possibly could have pressure. Is that right?
The point I'm making is the subdivision regulations state if it's over a 6-inch line, the planning commission can look at requiring a hydrant. If we were to get feedback from the water department that there's not enough pressure to put a hydrant in, that would be a contingency and,
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
I was gonna say what Sam did. I'm concerned about the water pressure in that location. You're getting close to Macon County line out there. I know that's pretty far out. I don't know if there's enough pressure in that area for a fire hydrant. I know up where I live on Taylortown, there's not enough pressure for it. And I'm closer to town. The only thing they can do off mine is just open it up and let it naturally leak out, so they can't pump off of it. And I don't know that they'd be able to pump off one that far out.
Okay.
This piece of property is at the Macon County line. It's a long ways out.
I tend to agree with the mayor and Sam. I don't see that there's adequate pressure and going to be for a while anyway.
I mean, even if y'all did request one, it more than likely, if my memory serves me correctly, it would just be a flush out. It wouldn't be usable.
Well, I'm not big on just putting something in just to have something in. Anybody else?
If it was just a flushable, it really would meet the criteria needed, but it wouldn't be fire protection.
Right.
So that would benefit anybody.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a question
Wait a
about,
minute, Ms. Keesley?
oh, go ahead.
Keep this thing on. You mentioned a couple of times that we could require conditions for the flood area. Could you explain that?
Sure. So in the subdivision regulations, there's a section relating to flood-prone areas, and it lists about 13 items for the planning commission to review. And I would say a lot of it is probably relatively difficult for the planning commission to review because this is an unstudied flood area. I'm sure he can relay that information.
If it makes it easier for you, there's such a small portion of the building envelope that's actually in the flood area. I can just delete that section to where they have to build on the roadside of the flood line. And then that takes care of any issues that you might have.
Yeah, so
That
if
sounds
you would
like
be
a common
amenable,
sense
I
solution.
mean, all that's going to be handled in my office anyways.
That's correct.
yeah. So for the plat condition, we would ask that the building envelope or the building setback area be amended to match the flood line. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if you look on the plat that was provided, right under 2, where it says the acreage and then the square footage, in my opinion, that specific spot right underneath the numbering there is adequate space to put a house. So that, if it comes to my office, that's where they're going to put the house, or they will, you know, incur the cost of having it build up high enough to be out of the flood zone. So, but that is the building envelope that he's got listed there, and he has the flood line listed as well, which does not touch that area, and they can't use the soils area. So they have limited options. It's going to be put right there where the numbering is.
Mary Ann, did you have some comments?
No, it was about the flood area.
Okay. So I think Mr. Carmen is going to redraw that part where that the building envelope does no longer touch the floodplain. Am I stating that correctly, Jim? Okay. Any other questions or discussion point? Yes, sir.
Is this, once he redraws this, is it for me to sign off on in the office? That would make it final.
I would think so. I don't see any reason to come back here. That's
Okay. Just want to clarify that in the minutes.
just killing time.
We just need to make the recommendation contingent on him making that change on the plat.
Well, I think that's just one, and well, he had others, Mary had others down here, which he's already met. And so, yeah, just whoever makes a motion, just include that in their motion that he meet the agreement made tonight about the building envelope no longer being in the floodplain. And then he and Sam can work that out themselves, you know. Does that suit everybody? Do I have a motion? Yes, sir.
Motion to approve with the stipulation of adjusting the building line.
Okay. Do I have a second? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. It does pass.
That was Rhonda.
I'm sorry. Rhonda seconded, yes, sir. Jim, you've been a busy man, haven't you?
It's been a busy day.
All right, next on our agenda is discussion topics. Anybody have any discussions? The chairman has nothing to report. Building inspector is reporting that new residents' building permits slowed down during the month of September. From all that's passed tonight, I see that in the future, building permits may jump back up. Sam, do you have any other things that you'd like to report?
Since the permits have slowed down, we've just been knocking out the complaints that's been filed with the office. So we've submitted a lot of letters lately to get certain things that are fixed that have been held off because of inspections and stuff. So we've been knocking out a lot of complaints. So everybody should be seeing some changing, and anybody out there that's watching or listening, your complaints that you submitted, they are in progress. So.
Mr. Mayor?
I just let the commission know that the application for the multimodal access grant for the sidewalk project on, I guess, the northern end of Broadway here going up to McMurray was submitted before the deadline. It'll probably be sometime early next year before we hear anything back from TDOT.
It'd be great if we could get approved for that. That's a badly needed. And I assume that the red light area, the intersection up there is still on for later this year?
Yes, sir. Last feedback I had from TDOT, it's supposed to go to bid about middle of December.
Okay. Mary, anything closing?
I don't have anything new.
All right. Anybody, anything else from Yes,
So yeah, I
ma'am,
do
go
have
ahead.
one thing. I will probably be reaching out shortly with information about training opportunities available. We did 1 hour collectively, but everyone has about 3 left. And I believe TAPA will be doing another virtual training opportunity in November. So I'll distribute information about that and see what everyone's availability is to do that opportunity.
Okay. I enjoyed that virtual. That was good.
I agree.
Mhm. Just to let the commission know, if you've noticed some of Dr. Carey's property getting cleaned up, I had to see Dan today for some blood test results, and I asked him if his father was ill, because anybody knows Dr. Carey, he don't do Dan's the one footing that bill. So y'all may have already known that, I didn't, but I just couldn't resist the chance, since I was there anyway, to ask him about the health of his father. It concerned me. Any other questions, comments, or anything from anybody on the commission? Yes, sir. Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? We're adjourned.